Welcome to the kbbreview podcast and welcome to a brand new season. Yes, this is episode 1 of season 12 of the only podcast dedicated to independent kitchen, bedroom and bathroom retailers. But I appreciate that's quite niche. I'm still your host, Andy Davies. I'm sorry about that, swings and roundabouts. And we've got a great run of episodes lined up for this season that will take us all the way into July. So here's just a taste of what we've got coming up.
I believe that the majority of retailers in the home improvement market, when times are tough, they sit there and they stare at their front door hoping it will go bing bong, and it doesn't.
I even get tickets because I don't want my van to be out of my sight when I'm at work. If I've got to park on a double yellow line, I'll park on a double yellow line.
It looks cheap, it's naff, and it should just be outlawed and shamed at every opportunity.
If we understand how disabled people work, how a disabled person cooks, how a disabled person lives in their home, we can design for that. And knowing how to design that way does not cost a penny more on the price of the kitchen. It's just knowing what to do and what not to do.
When you wake up and find your van has been broken into, or one of our team finds the van, it's not uncommon to see 2 or 3 vans left and right of you with padlocks and deadlocks all on the floor cut off with doors half open.
Yeah, no, I'm just being controversial.
Yes, all that is to come and a lot more besides, but what have we got here for episode 1? Well, today we're looking at that tricky yet often desirable symbol of growth for an independent retailer, and that's the second showroom. Now, we know that the vast majority of KDB independents operate out of just one showroom, but many often seriously think about another. It's an obvious way to expand the business, but there are plenty of cons to go with the long list of pros. Finding the right location, spreading yourself too thin, finding people you trust to run it, and starting to build a whole new customer base in a different area. So we're going to talk it all through with a couple of top retailers and friends of the show, Mark Butler from Butler Interiors and Liz Pantling-Jones from Lima Kitchens. Mark took the plunge on a second showroom a few years ago, and Liz is seriously considering that move right now. I met up with them a few weeks ago, and this is a really interesting conversation that gets right to the heart of finding that showroom, as well as weighing up all those pros and cons. But first, this is episode 1 of season 12 of the kbbreview podcast. So if you're listening to this and you're not following us in your podcast app of choice, then why not? There's well over 200 other episodes sitting there waiting for your ears to join them. And if you're listening in your browser, then search for kbbreview, all one word, in an app such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify or YouTube, and you'll find us there and you can follow us there. So here is Mark Butler and Liz Pantling-Jones. Thank you both for sparing us time. Right, let's start with introductions. Mark, tell us all about you, your business, and where you're from.
I'm a kitchen retailer based in North Yorkshire. I've got 2 shops, one in North Yorkshire, one in Cumbria. Butler Interiors, we do Shuller C out of one showroom, and we do Next 125 out of the other showroom.
Brilliant. Liz?
I'm from Lima Kitchens, based in Milton Keynes. We are a single showroom, predominantly work on British products on a component basis, but we have recently taken on Next 125 to expand what we're offering.
Right, so we're going to talk about second showrooms, and it's almost as if I planned it this way. Mark, obviously you have 2 showrooms, and your second showroom is relatively recent.
It's 5 years now.
5 years. Yeah. Liz, you'd like a second showroom.
Love it.
But we need to take the leap. So we're going to see a bit of train of thought and see where we can get to at the end of this. Mark, so tell us about your second showroom. In particular, tell us how you got from deciding to get a second showroom. You've got one, it's very successful, it's doing all right. What was the thing that made you think, right, let's get the other one?
So my journey was probably a little bit different than other people's. We worked for an industrial unit on a out-of-the-way situation. We had no passing trade whatsoever, so albeit everyone came in for recommendations, which was always positive, I was always wondering whether we were missing on that sort of passing trade element of business. We deal with Shuller C, we deal with Next 125. We had Shuller C and Next 125 in the same showroom, and it was a fairly small space, and it just confused clients. So we've gone down the route of separating the 2 brands. That was the main reason I did it. Keeping Shuller C for the mid-market and pushing Next 125 to the high-end level of the market. So again, we've dressed both showrooms in a way that the Shuller C is definitely aimed at mid-market, and the Next 125, albeit there are some crossover finishes, we've put the displays in there that are very high-end, separate the 2 brands.
So this is about creating a completely different offering almost. It wasn't about we're doing all right here, so let's replicate it somewhere else further down the road. It was about having a different offering.
That was it, yeah. I never really had a dream to open 2 showrooms. We were quite happy with the showroom that we had, but it was just an opportunity was there to separate the 2 brands and really try and take us to the next level.
But why not, for example, expand? Why not open up one showroom that's bigger somewhere else? Why a completely separate location?
Well, actually, I'm probably going to throw a bit of a spanner in the works of this conversation we're having now. The reason that I did do that was because there was nowhere available to get us under one roof. Ironically, it's very, very, very early days, but we may have the opportunity in the next 18 months of getting us back under one roof with the 2 brands in much larger premises. It is something that I am thinking about. It's, as I say, it's not part of the plan because the second showroom's only been open 5 years, but it feels right at this moment in time. That may be where we end up going.
Right, that's interesting. So what about you, Liz? You've got a very successful business already. What is it that's making you think we should do something else, as opposed to just carrying on, expanding, diversifying? What's making you think we need another location?
It's always been something that we've spoken about, having our main showroom, which isn't particularly big. It's got 5 to 6 decent sized displays in there, but then having more satellite showrooms 15, 20 miles down the road so that we can expand and service those areas better. So maybe just having one traditional, one contemporary display and it be manned by 1 or 2 people. But we've never really managed to get there because it's the jump from making our business about us and making it a business that anyone can duplicate and that we can leave to run itself. And it's just making sure you've got those processes in place for us.
So for you, it's much more about expanding the area you serve. Okay, so let's deal with that, Mark. What were the things that you would hesitate about? What were the things that you were worried about when you started that process? Was it spreading yourself too thin? Was it losing a bit of the personal touch? What were you thinking when that process started?
I think the first concern, as any business owner would have, is it just not working, it being the wrong decision. You've got to get people through the door. And one thing that became a concern early on that actually now we're perfectly fine on, I was shocked by how we were on a busy main road, but actually it never really brought the footfall in. Very, very strange. So we as a business, we've been in business now 20 years and we've always worked on our reputation. That's where all the work tends to come from. Certainly did historically before we opened the second showroom. But I imagine that on day one would just be like opening the floodgates and all these cars that were passing, people would come through the door. And it never did do. So that brought a different dynamic on it because when people did come in as well, the first showroom, they were all recommended. They were coming to buy a kitchen off us because we were out of the way. So again, when we were getting people through the door, a downside was they weren't necessarily coming to buy a kitchen off us anymore. They were just coming to buy a kitchen from somewhere else.
So you're very well established. You have it built up in a reputation and you're almost starting your reputation again from scratch in a completely different area.
Absolutely. And that now 5 years on is what's really starting to reap rewards for us. So again, we've come from a level that we were, a mid-market kitchen company, but we've now taken on the project for 2 very upmarket developers in our area that are really hitting the top end of the market. And we wouldn't have got them projects without the second showroom. Because as much as anything, it's the location of the second showroom. It's beautiful. Without saying it myself, the aesthetics of the building is beautiful. It's in a fantastic area. So it does suit the developers to send their clients to us because it's a nice experience for them.
So Liz, what are you thinking here about effectively starting from scratch 20 miles down the road? Can you remember how to do it?
I think that's what puts us back. It's the starting from scratch, picking the location. And I think it's really interesting that you've just said about the aesthetics of the building because we work from an industrial estate as well. The obvious points of the rents being lower parking and that kind of convenience. But on the other side is the fact that you've been noticed and recommended and been able to build those relationships presumably easier than you did previously. So I think that's a really interesting thing to think about. But starting from scratch, is absolutely terrifying. That whole business plan, thinking about your contingency if the floodgates don't open and
what's worked where you are now won't necessarily work
absolutely
there. So all that experience might not be
relevant.
As valuable or as relevant as you think it is. Well, let's talk about location. Okay, you're making that leap, you get in the car, you go out and start seeing places. What was going through your head there, Mark, when you were thinking that? Did you pick a rough location, let's look in that area, or the location came first, you just saw that space and thought that's it? What did you think?
It was the location came first. Yeah, I drove past it daily and it seemed like an opportunity. Then I sat and watched other businesses go on the same space. There was a high-end sort of home automation company went in that were next door but one, which I knew of that business, so we had a discussion about could we not work off each other. I think for me the location came first, thought of separating the brands came second, and actually the third thing was the wish for a second showroom. It just sort of all felt natural. And like I said previously, it's taken us 5 years, but 5 years on now, we're now establishing ourselves at the higher end of the market as well.
So it's a different business. There's two separate businesses running, as opposed to a second showroom of the same business. It's two different businesses.
It is. But one other thing that's come from it as well, which works really quite well, is the mid-market sector has more clients ready to buy than the high end. So when people do come in, there is the passing trade and don't know anything about us, and they walk in, generally the first impression is, wow, this is beautiful. The second impression could be, it's also very expensive. So we then have an opportunity to talk to them clients, and we will then steer them to the other showroom. So that works really well as well, because we wouldn't have got those clients without doing what we've done.
So you'd spotted the space, you thought it's beautiful, love it, familiar or similar businesses in the area. Did you research the demographics? Did you, how in depth did you go, or were you just in love with the space? That was it?
I think it was just in love with the space. I was brought up in the area. My children went to school half a mile away from where we are, so I knew the area fairly well. And we're lucky we're in an affluent area as well. We are literally on the corner, on the Lancashire corner. This particular showroom, within half a mile, it's in Cumbria, but within half a mile we're into Lancashire, another half hour into North Yorkshire. We advertise on serving the Bay Lakes and Dales, and we literally can, within half an hour in the Lake District, we're in the Yorkshire Dales, and then we're down the Loon Valley into Morecambe Bay.
There's a big jump into a new business, but there's a certain reassurance that comes from being very familiar with the area anyway. What are you thinking in terms of locations and areas? Would you research? Would you want to know about demographics, or are you looking for the perfect place?
I think it's always been about demographics for us. I'm always keeping an eye out, and we've inquired about properties that we've seen and never really ended up getting anywhere with it. But yeah, I think finding the right area with the demographics around which are going to be suitable is an important factor for us. I think for us as a business, that's instilled in us because we opened just before the 2008 recession, and we had to fight through that. And I think our location really played a part in us being able to get over that period. So it's something we hang on to.
And are you looking for a high street? Are you looking for another out of town? How is it going to be different in your head? I know a lot of this is very conceptual, but how much of it is picking one thing up and putting it somewhere else, and how much of it is a totally different?
I think for us, we would quite like a small high street to be working on, because it is different to what we already have. And there are a lot of affluent areas around Milton Keynes which we could settle into and pull in from different areas. At the moment, we have employees who work towards Cotswolds, so being able to potentially pull in and use some of that market could be useful and a good decision for us.
All right, Mark, let's ask the difficult question now. You've got the space you want, fallen in love with it, you know exactly what you're going to do with it. How the hell are you paying for it? You've got to finance this thing, so it's an investment, isn't it? So what's the journey that you go through there to get the pound notes to be able to move in?
I think we were fairly lucky the fact that we were well established, so we did actually finance it through cash flow of the business. There was no personal cash went into it for myself at all. It was just before COVID, 12 months to the day before COVID. So again, when COVID came, that changed absolutely everything for us. Obviously, it was not part of the plan, but of course there was the offering then of bounce back loans, which we took. And in actual fact, that's really smoothed everything out for us. It really came at a really good time. Low rate finance, and indirectly, that was part of the financial package that financed the second showroom.
Is that something that concerns you, worries you? I mean, of course it does, it's money, isn't it? But are you confident that you would be able to move in there and give it the longevity that it needs to make it work in terms of financing the thing?
I think we're stable enough to be able to do it. And one of the things that we look for is being able to own the property as well, rather than be under landlords for a second showroom. So I think having that added pressure, but also security, gives us a bit more confidence behind being able to do it. And I think between us, we're not afraid of hard work, so we would just make it work.
I suppose at some point you've got to just jump, haven't you?
Yeah, that's it.
Because there's always, a business might pick up next month, month after, it might be in 6 months' time. Why don't we just wait and see? At some point, you just got to do it.
It's like trying to have kids. If you always wait for it and put it off,
they're much more expensive than a showroom.
Yeah, precisely. If you're making that conscious decision and you're putting it off for a better day, that day will never come.
Money, I suspect, is much easier than finding people to actually work at it, because you're almost starting that from scratch as well. You've got your showroom, you work in it, you know it back to front, but suddenly you've got to have somebody else in the other one running it for you. How hard is it to find the people, Mark?
That's the hardest thing. And if there was a reason why I wouldn't do it again, and there isn't, I'm more than happy with the choices we've made. But in actual fact, if we end up going back under one roof, it's down to the opportunity that's in front of us at this moment in time. We've established ourselves in the area where the second showroom is, and there's some more options coming available to us to take charge of a far bigger building. But the biggest thing is the staffing of it. We're in an area where our pool of potential employees is fairly small. So one of the things that help towards the cost with this, we never actually took on any more staff. We split our team, and we just literally split the team. So half of us went to the new place and half of us stayed. But then what also quickly happened was the original premises is the whole bits where it all happens. The deliveries are coming in, most of the phone calls come in that are non-design related, where the second showroom, we don't get any of that. So what it also became was a very designated design space for the designers. So we were with 3 designers, so we would keep one designer, and we still do now. We'd keep one designer in what was our first showroom, then 2 designers go and work out the second showroom. They just get peace and quiet. So other than the obvious people coming through the door, which is great, and that's what we want, of course, they don't get disturbed. So we call it our little design studio, where we can just let the designers go.
So they're working across both showrooms?
They're working across both showrooms,
right,
yeah.
okay.
We quite simply, beginning of the week, we send a WhatsApp group message out. You're in such a place this day, you're in such a place the following day.
And how
That's
do
how
you
we do
divide
it.
your time up?
My time is mainly spent at the first showroom, because that's where everything goes on. But of course, I'm always bobbing over there. We're 9 miles apart, so we're 20 minutes drive, that's all, from one showroom to the other. So I just go in on as required and as needed. But like I say, the newer of the 2 showrooms, we do nothing financial there at all. We've got 3 beautiful large Next 125 displays and a design office and a presentation space, and that is it. So the business is run from our original showroom. That works really well.
So, I mean, you're recruiting as we speak, aren't you? And that look on your face tells me that it's not easy.
So I think it's been a little frustrating for us, because we found a property that we've been discussing in an affluent area, a place we've always spoken about, nice high street location, perfect, lots of architects that we already know in the area. But our situation has changed a lot over the last 6 weeks with staffing for varying different reasons. And we're now back to recruiting, finding new people, bringing them up to the speed that we want them to be before we feel we can then go and make that decision and have that separation. And I think the way that you've set it up is exactly how we see it, having that kind of second design centre. We've got more that you can go and have a look at, but this is kind of the quieter space. We can get all of the samples together and just really focus, rather than the guy ringing the doorbell for a delivery and no one being there because they've gone and done something else and just being pulled from one place to the other. So you completely just described the dream.
There we go. So I think with independents, or a lot of the independents I've met over the years, they are control freaks in the best possible way, right?
Yeah,
That's how independent business SME owners work. And they find it very difficult to delegate. They find it very difficult to let go. They have a just give it here, I'll do it myself kind of attitude, which is brilliant. It's exactly what you need to be a successful business owner. But then when you expand or you spread or you have more than one location, suddenly you have to trust people. You have to trust the person in the other space to know what they're doing, and finding those people is just really, really difficult.
It's really tricky. Started to think that I'm being too picky, but I'm really not. Applications for about 65 people. Most of them aren't local, and by not local, not even within the UK. And it's just finding that process and them understanding what we're looking for is just so difficult.
We've had exactly the same. We've just put an advert out a month ago for designer, and actually for the first time ever, and I mean the first time ever in 20 years, we had 4 really, really good applicants. We've never had that before. But like you say, Liz, the amount of applicants you get from, out of the country and the other end of the country that will relocate. And it's hard. Staffing is the hardest thing, especially when you do the job. I believe we do it as good as anyone else. I'm not saying that we're the absolute best, but I believe we're up there with the best, and we've got high requirements, and trying to get people in that can think like you and almost have the same aspiration for perfection as yourself.
I suspect you must have a much more sort of formal induction element to it, because you want to maybe not replicate the exact business, but you want to replicate the culture and the ethos of the business in a second location. So you've really got to indoctrinate someone in the first thing before you move over to the second thing. And that can take time, and that's difficult as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We're going to blue sky this a little bit now, so bear with me. If you're selling kitchens, for example, there is also an option of, well, maybe we could do a bathroom showroom. Let's make a completely different offering by going into a completely different sector. Is that just completely off the table? Would you never think about doing this? Or is Liz looking at you, scowling at me? What do you think?
One of the things someone said to me really early on was opening your second showroom is the hardest because it's the first time you're duplicating what you've done. So to then do that with a product that you're not familiar with feels slightly insane. So getting that second showroom up and then adding to the product would feel much safer to me, definitely.
Yes. What do you think, Mark?
Many, many moons ago, and it's probably 15 years ago now, we had a little bit of a play with bathrooms. Now, I've always been in a kitchen background all my working life, and very quickly I just established, for me as a business, it didn't work. We were making margin on the furniture and furniture only, so the margin was low in comparison to kitchens, and I just became a busy fool. I was just spending all my life running around organising trades, and actually the gain from it wasn't good enough. Obviously, there must be the guys that specialise in bathrooms make it work, but no, it wasn't for me. Stick with kitchens. It's what I know. It's what we're good at.
Well, the other thing that a few people have done, and you know people that have done this, Mark, is that they've got a very successful business that's been around for years, and now they've opened up a franchise elsewhere in the area. And that's, it's like a straight out of the box. It's not your business, it's a franchise. Would you ever think about doing that, Liz?
That's something my business partner really wants to do, but I am the control freak with trust issues, so I don't see ever finding anyone that I would trust with my baby so much. But yeah, who knows?
But it is like a satellite thing that I'm sure people know we're talking about. But there's, they very much treat it as a satellite business that's just there ticking over, thank you very much. And, it's that straight out the box business that works for them. And they know how to run a kitchen business. Therefore, they can put that expertise into it. But everything else is effectively taken care of. What do you think, Mark?
It's something that's never been on my radar, but quite like you say, Andy, there's two people in question that I know very, very well that have just done that. And actually, I've had the conversation with both of them. It's not on my radar, but I'm led to believe they've done it successfully, and they're both very, very pleased with the outcome, which is
so who knows?
Food for thought, isn't it? Food for thought.
All right, so look, let's round this up. Let's start with you, Mark. You've done it. What would you do differently? What are the main lessons you've learned? What would you say to someone like Liz who's thinking about doing it that they have to put as the bullet points on their list? What do you think?
For me, it's finding the right location. That's, of course, key. It's working out what you're going to do with it, i.e. whichever you've mentioned, Liz, keeping it separate from the traditional to the more contemporary feel. So I think that's a good start in the right direction with it. And the next thing for me, as well as the location, is parking. And also, again, Liz has mentioned there, high street. We are on the street, but we're not on a high street, which is on a busy main road with loads and loads of parking. So again, I think that's a key thing. I did mention that as a business, we may at some point end up back under one roof. That isn't to mean to say that I'm against two showrooms. I think it's been a bad move. It's been a most fantastic move for us as a business. It's just broadened our horizons and got us noticed by lots of people that wouldn't have noticed us. The only reason that I would get us back under one roof is the absolute right place, the right showroom in the right area to overcome staffing issues. That would be the only reason for it.
Oh, Liz, why haven't you done it? What's stopping you? What's stopping you from jumping off the... Right, it's just the staff.
Staffing and finding the right location. So just the timing of everything marrying together. But as already said, if you always wait for the perfect time, do you ever do it?
Sometimes you've got to pull the trigger, haven't you? It's as simple as that. And it's one of the great things about business owners is they have ambition. You have ambition to do new things and try new things. And it's only up to you whether you do or whether you don't. You don't have to ask the boss, do you? Because you are the boss.
Correct.
And I think picking up on that, what Liz has just said, when we did it, it wasn't really a grand plan. Yes, it was something that was sort of flying around the back of my head, but then it just happened to be the premises came up. At the time, it was floating around the back of my head. Yeah, let's go for it. What are we going to lose here? What are we going to lose? But there was no great plan put into place, but it's worked. It's worked very, very well.
Brilliant. Well, we'll be back here in a year's time, Liz, and we'll have you telling somebody else how to do it.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Well, look, thanks so much for your time. Thank you for talking to us about it. It's so interesting, I think. And it's one of those things that I think I suspect is in the back of most retailers' heads at some point, is how do we take this a little bit further? So thank you for that. Scratch the surface of a very interesting subject. Thank you.
You're very welcome. No, thank you.
That was Mark Butler and Liz Pantling-Jones, and a huge thanks to them for all their time and expertise. There was so much packed into that, and I'm sure there are many retailers listening who nodded along with everything they were saying, whether you have that second showroom or not. We'll be back next week with episode 2 of season 12, so don't forget to follow us in your podcast app, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify or YouTube. Simply search KBB Review, all one word, and you'll find us there. See you next time.